Hey, good morning, everyone. It is time for Mantra Monday. It is Monday, November 9th. I cannot believe how fast this year is flying by, but it is. And I hope you had a good weekend. We had a very amazing weekend. And it is definitely fall. Fall is definitely upon us. So I am wearing a new plush, wrappy thing. Got my coffee, my tea, my smoothie, my water, and we're ready to go. So we have been covering Bhagavad-gītā chapter 10, which is called The Opulence of the Absolute. And in this chapter, for those people that are new, it covers basically many of the ways in which the Lord is manifest to us while we live on earth. Bhagavad-gītā is a very, very old text. It is called, the translation means literally the Song of God, and it is a conversation between Prince Arjuna and Bhagavan, Sri Kṛṣṇa, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right before this big fight that's about to happen, that the Kurus have been instigating, and the Pāṇḍavas have been trying to stop for, at this point, by the time this battle comes up, I mean, I want to say at least 15 years, at least, they've been going through this rigmarole, because of course the fight is over the kingdom. And one side wants to share, and the other side doesn't want to share at all. And not only does the other side not want to share at all, they want to kill, they want to fight, they want to have everything for themselves. They are not interested in any form of compromise, in any form of love. And of course it's heartbreaking for Arjuna and his whole family, because these are his cousin brothers and other family members. These are people that he's actually grown up with, that he's learned so many things with. So this conversation is an effort to enlighten Arjuna, who basically has taken the role of every man, of every man and woman, who finds themselves in this predicament called life, that life on earth, which, whether we want it to be or not, seems to be full of conflicts. And so this is enlightening conversation, spelling out what is the difference between matter and spirit, what is the nature of time, what is karma, what is action and reaction, what is the nature of the soul, and how we can actually navigate through life successfully as a yogi. And of course, yogi, that's just a Sanskrit word, which means to link up with God, to link up with Creator. So, I'm discussing a lot of concepts that are familiar, some concepts which may not be familiar, and I'm using a different language for it. I'm using a Sanskrit language for it, because this is a language of the ancient texts, the Vedas. Veda means knowledge. This is the language in which they have been written in. And as we talked about the week before last, there's also different grammatical rules on how these verses are composed. Whoever's here, good morning. So this is the more esoteric, I guess you could say, the more esoteric side of my personality. Hey, Paul, good morning. Thank you for all the hearts and likes on my videos and my photos and all of that. I really appreciate it. It's really, really kind of you. So this conversation that I have on Monday mornings really is just designed to uplift, to try and kind of frame our week, and just kind of give us some perspective on where we are in life. It's also was inspired from my album. I have a house music album called Yoga on the Dance Floor, and in that album, I'm singing some original songs I've written in English, but also a lot of curated songs from these texts. And after that album doing well for so long, I thought, maybe I should kind of explain to people what the inspiration behind all this is. And, so that's how all this came about. Okay, so like I said, we are up to text 37. Yeah, here we go. All right, one little sip of this because my throat's a little dry this morning. It's cold and windy here. Okay, here we go. So, as usual, I'm going to read the Sanskrit first, then I'm going to read the word-for-word translation, then I'm going to read the translation, then I'm going to read the purport, and then after that, I'm going to try and give any insight that I have. But this verse is actually very cool this morning. Okay. Vṛṣṇīnāṁ vāsudevo asmi, pāṇḍavānāṁ dhanañ-jayaḥ, munīnām api aham vyāsa, kavīnām Uśanā kaviḥ. So now I'm going to sing it. Vṛṣṇīnāṁ vāsudevo asmi, pāṇḍavānāṁ dhanañ-jayaḥ, munīnām api aham vyāsa, kavīnām Uśanā kaviḥ. Vṛṣṇīnāṁ vāsudevo asmi, pāṇḍavānāṁ dhanañ-jayaḥ, munīnām api aham vyāsa, kavīnām Uśanā kaviḥ. So I sing it because in the upper planetary systems or in the spiritual world, every word is a song and every step is a dance. Okay, so the translation is Vṛṣṇīnāṁ, of the descendants of Vṛṣṇi, Vasudeva, Kṛṣṇa in Dvārakā, asmi, I am, Pāṇḍavānām, of the Pāṇḍavas, dhanañ-jayaḥ, Arjuna, munīnām, of the sages, api, also, aham, I am, Vyāsa, Vyāsa, the compiler of all Vedic literature, kavīnām, of all great thinkers, Uśanā, kaviḥ, the thinker. So here's the translation. Of the descendants of Vṛṣṇi, I am Vasudeva, and of the Pāṇḍavas, I am Arjuna. Of the sages, I am Vyāsa, and among great thinkers, I am Uśanā. Okay, so here's the translation from Bhagavad-gītā as it is. Kṛṣṇa is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Baladeva is Krishna's immediate expansion. Both Lord Kṛṣṇa and Baladeva appeared as sons of Vasudeva, so both of them may be called Vāsudeva. From another point of view, because Kṛṣṇa never leaves Vṛndāvana, all the forms of Kṛṣṇa that appear elsewhere are his expansions. Vasudeva is Kṛṣṇa's immediate expansion, so Vasudeva is not different from Kṛṣṇa. It is to be understood that the Vasudeva referred to in this verse of Bhagavad-gītā is Baladeva or Balaram, because he is the sole source of all incarnations, and thus he is also called Vasudeva. The immediate expansion of the Lord are called svamsa, personal expansions. And there are also expansions called vibhinamsa, separated expansions. Amongst the sons of Pandu, Arjuna is famous as dhanañ-jayaḥ. He is the best of men and therefore represents Kṛṣṇa. Among the munis, or learned men conversant in Vedic knowledge, Vyāsa is the greatest because he explained Vedic knowledge in many different ways for the understanding of the common mass of people in this age of Kali, or hypocrisy and quarrel. And Vyāsa is also known as an incarnation of Kṛṣṇa. Therefore, Vyāsa also represents Kṛṣṇa. Kavis are those who are capable of thinking thoroughly on any subject matter. Among the kavis, Uśanā, or Sukracharya, was a spiritual master of the demons. He was an extremely intelligent and far-seeing politician. Thus, Sukracharya is another representative of the opulence of Kṛṣṇa. As I said, there are going to be some things that you're going to hear that are going to blow your mind, that are going to be definitely outside of the realm of, what you've ever heard before. And that's okay, I just ask you to keep an open mind, or just to listen. You don't have to understand it all. You don't have to agree with it all. I'm just the messenger repeating, like a parrot, like a sukha. Okay, so let me break this down a little bit. Okay, vṛṣṇīnāṁ, the descendants of Vṛṣṇi, Vasudeva, Kṛṣṇa and Dvārakā. So this is esoteric. This is a little esoteric, and this gets into some very intimate and inner workings of the divine energy, of the Creator's energy and of his moods. And Kṛṣṇa means all attractive. Kṛṣṇa is also considered to be Rasaraj, and Rasaraj means the king or the master of all relationships. In other words, God has the ability to have the perfect relationship with each one of us, regardless of, what our personalities are, because our personalities are inherent. Our personalities are eternal. In the word personality is the word person. As we display different moods when we are in various places, when we are in our job, we are displaying one mood. When we are at home, we're displaying another mood. When we're with our good buddies, we're in another mood. If we're going to somewhere formal, we're in another mood, and so on and so forth. And so, as we are made in the image of, the Creator also has many aspects and many varieties to his personality. And one of them is his mood in Dvārakā. Okay, Dvārakā is a city which existed. It no longer exists. It was actually consumed by water a long time ago. There are remnants of it that you can still see, but it was a real historical place. And it was the capital of the Yadu dynasty in ancient India. And Kṛṣṇa, when he was living in Dvārakā, he was living there as a king. And so there was a lot of pomp and circumstance, and there was more formality there, as opposed to his intimate mood in Vṛndāvana. Vṛndāvana is a real place. It's a village. You can visit it in India. And the mood there is very, very intimate, and everyone was very intimate, and everyone knew each other. It was an agrarian place, and it was a very tight-knit village. There is a mirror of this place, or I should say, we are the mirror, or Vṛndāvana in India is a mirror of, is a replication, is considered to be a replication, if you have the spiritual eyes to see it, of course, of Goloka Vṛndāvana, the actual planet, Goloka Vṛndāvana in the spiritual sky. So Goloka Vṛndāvana is considered to be the topmost spiritual planet, because that is where Kṛṣṇa resides intimately, in this mood of a cowherd boy surrounded by his mother and father and his family and friends. So when Kṛṣṇa goes to Dvārakā, his mood changes. So here it is to be understood that the Lord has this ability to expand himself. Of course, we are also his expansions. We are his jivas. We are his children. We are jiva. But in his greatness, he expands himself as svamsa. He has his immediate personal expansions. Sometimes this is referred to also as Vishnu Tattva, right? So they are actually non-different from the Lord, but they are in a different mood. So this is the amazing thing, is that Kṛṣṇa is actually able to stay in Vṛndāvana, where he loves. This is where his heart is at all times, and also be many other places simultaneously. So we say that God is omnipresent and that he is omniscient. So here is an example from the Vedas in just one of the ways in which he is. and it's very personal. Okay, so to break this down even further, it's basically, Prabhupada is basically saying here, okay, Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Baladeva is his first expansion. Baladeva is also known as Balaram. And in this pastime, they both appeared as the sons of Vasudeva. So it's kind of like in Scotland, or it's kind of like, well, a lot of countries have this, or the Netherlands, when you are the son of, in Scotland they say Mac, in the Netherlands they say Van, like Van Halen, right? So Eddie Van Halen, Eddie was a son of Halen, etc. So this is kind of a crude example, but essentially saying that Kṛṣṇa and Balaram, they were called Vasudeva because their father was called Vasudeva as well. Okay, but it has many, many meanings here. Vasudeva is also Krishna's immediate expansion. All right, not to get too caught up in this, but this is to be noted, because again, this chapter is called the Opulence of the Absolute, right? So this is definitely an opulence, if you can be absolutely whole and be absolutely yourself and never diminish in any way, and be fully cognizant in knowing absolutely everything that is going on in the universe, the multiverses, and what every living entity is doing and feeling, right? And who struck John, who's doing what to whom, being completely self-aware, and then also being able to expand yourself, and that expansion of yourself is also in communication with your original self. It's a little bit trippy. Yeah. Okay, so now moving on to the next part of this verse, where he says that of the Pāṇḍavas, I am Arjuna. Okay, so Arjuna definitely has his own mother and father. His mother is Kunti, Queen Kunti Devi. And remember, Kunti and Madri, her co-wife, were made widows because their husband Pandu died very young. So these two queens, were basically left with the responsibility of raising these 5 boys and steering them into manhood and responsibility, where they would eventually assume rulership for the kingdom. So that is Arjuna's mother, Queen Kunti. Arjuna's father, very special personality, celestial personality, none other than Indra, the king of heaven. So Indra actually has an incredible amount of wealth, an incredible amount of opulence, and also gave Arjuna some very powerful weapons, a very powerful bow. Arjuna was also trained in military science and arts by his grandfather Bhishma. Bhishma, who in this whole story of the Mahabharata is actually, unfortunately, fighting on the opposing side with the Kurus. But needless to say, that Bhishma was an incredible warrior, and Arjuna and his brothers were under his tutelage, because a prince needs to know how to fight. He needs to know how to protect. And this was definitely the code of Kshatriyas back in the day. Kshatriya literally means to protect from harm. They are considered to be the arms of the social body and to protect. So, as such, Arjuna definitely had some Shakti, some power to be able to win wealth, to be able to gain wealth. And this goes back to Kshatriya culture also. I'm not going to get too much into that today, but this is why his name is dhanañ-jayaḥ. Dhanañ-jayaḥ means winner of wealth. Jai also means victory, so you get the idea. So because Arjuna is also in this role of being a friend who becomes a student, who becomes a perfect student, who becomes a disciple, and who possesses all good qualities. He has bravery, he has courage, he has chivalry, he has all those things, but he's also humble, and he's also able to listen. He's also able to take instruction. He's able to admit when he's overwhelmed, when he is overwhelmed by grief and all of these things. In other words, he is spiritually inclined, and he isn't arrogant and puffed up because of his position. Arjuna was also very beautiful, a very beautiful man, all these different things. He was from a very long line of princes and kings. He was from a great dynasty. But nevertheless, he always exhibited this kind of self-control and this kindness. So this is the quality of a great human being, that they're able to operate, within their role and within their position, as is their duty, as is their varna, and as is their ashram. But they are also able to take instruction. They're not so puffed up and so arrogant by the external trappings of their current life that they are not able to listen to others. And Arjuna is taking this role in the Bhagavad-gītā as every man. He's going through all these stages of emotion. I was listening to a lecture the other day, and the Prabhu was explaining that even though chapter 2 in the Bhagavad-gītā is called Contents of the Gita Summarized, in Sanskrit, the translation is, the grief of Arjuna. So Arjuna is going through all the human emotions. He's going through despondency, he's going through grief, he's going through a great amount of grief, so much so that his body becomes weak, he doesn't want to fight, his thoughts are clouded, he's overwhelmed, he begins quivering. So you see throughout the Bhagavad-gītā, how Arjuna is edified and how he is uplifted as he goes through this process, and about to face something that is extremely difficult. So that is why Arjuna is considered to be the representative of God, because he is qualified. Okay, so he says, among the munis or learned men conversant in Vedic knowledge, Vyāsa is the greatest because he explained Vedic knowledge in many different ways for the understanding of the common mass of people in this age of Kali. And Vyāsa is also known as an incarnation of Kṛṣṇa, therefore Vyāsa also represents Kṛṣṇa. Yeah, so Vāsudeva is an empowered, he's like a Shakti-Vesh avatar. He's an empowered entity who compiled all the Vedas. So sometimes you see this image of Ganesh, who has a broken tusk, right? Well, he has a broken tusk because he agreed to transcribe and to write down all the Vedas as long as Vāsudeva didn't stop reciting. So part of the Vedas consist of the Puranas, they consist of the history, and they also consist of hymns. We talked about that before, the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda. They consist of the Atartha Veda, the Vedas for how to perform different ritualistic activities, but there's so many more. There's the Vedas that, the Ayurveda, right? That is the Ayurveda is medicine. There's a Veda that covers the military sciences. There's a Veda that covers intimacy. There's a Veda that covers mathematics. I mean, just about anything, everything that you could want, there is a Veda that covers that. And so Vāsudeva, wrote this down for us in this age to provide us with some guidance, because previously people were able to listen to these things or orally through the sound and remember them. But in Kali Yuga, our memories aren't so good. I walk into a room and forget why I came into the room, and then leave, and then try and remember, and then go back. We've all been there. Not the case previously in previous ages. People didn't have this problem. But we have a lot of stress, and we have a lot of things, that we're always dealing with all the time that get in the way of our just living. Okay, so this is why all these Vedas were compiled. And among these Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad-gītā. The Bhagavad-gītā is actually the middle chapter to the Mahabharata. And then the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be the postgraduate study for these topics of the science of self-realization. Okay, so that's Vyasadeva's contribution. Now, this is an enormous task. I mean, enormous. So usually when there is a task that is absolutely enormous, that no human being could actually handle, that is when Krishna will advent himself, or send an empowered version of himself to handle it, to carry out that function. So that is Vyasadeva. And there's a whole story about Vyasadeva and all that, but we're not going to get into that today. But Vyasadeva himself is quite an interesting character and personality. It's said that Vyasadeva is still living, and he's living in the Himalayas somewhere in meditation. Okay, so then it says here, kavis are those who are capable of thinking thoroughly on any subject matter. So this is like critical thinking to the ninth power. These are people that are very intellectual. In other words, they are able to analyze and think critically and understand a topic and a subject from many, many, many different perspectives in pursuance of the Vedic version. So, among the kavis, Uśanā, or Sukracharya, is considered to be an extremely intelligent and far-seeing politician. Thus, Sukracharya is another representative of the opulence of Kṛṣṇa. Now, so what's interesting about this, and what I love about this, is that Sukracharya, he was actually the spiritual master of the Asuras. He was a spiritual master of what we would call, quote, the demoniac. In other words, the selfish and powerful among us. So you can say to yourself, well, how is this possible, that the Asuras or demoniac people could have a guru, could have a spiritual master? Well, I did a little research so we could get more into a deeper understanding of what this is about and what this means. But also briefly, just to say that in Vedic times, hey Jerry, nice to see you here, Hari Bol. But it's to say that in Vedic times, not only did the Suras have gurus, not only did they have spiritual masters, so did the Asuras. This was the standard, So even people that were considered to be Asuras were actually learned. Not like today. Okay, so I found this letter that is dated July 3rd, 1968, location Montreal, and the letter was written to Satsvarup. And this letter was written by Prabhupada. And Prabhupada is the person, hey Carl, Maverick, Niles, and Prabhupada is the person who translated, all these books from Sanskrit into English that we're able to read today. Okay, so he says, because Satsvarup had a question just about this, about Sukracharya. Okay, so bear with me here. My dear Satsvarup, please accept my blessings. I am in due receipt of your letter dated June 28th, 1968, and I thank you very much for it. Regarding Bali Maharaj, he is born in the same atheistic family of Maharaj Prahlad. He happened to be the grandson of Maharaj Prahlad, and as his great-grandfather, Hiranyakashipu, was very powerful, and as there was animosity between the demigods and the demons, or the Suras and the Asuras, Bali Maharaj also defeated the demigods several times and was occupying all the planets. At that time, Vamanadeva appeared as the son of Kasya Muni. Okay, so I just want to put this in perspective. So we love like Star Wars, right? These stories that we love, they are actually coming from a reality, or the concept is coming from a reality, things that actually happened in the universe. Of course, Hollywood takes these stories and refashions them, but in a way that these stories are typical. So for us as little human beings here on planet Earth, it may be hard for us to understand these things, that there is life in the universe. There's not only just life on this planet, there is life on all the planets, and on all the planets there are administrators. These are known as demigods, and the demigods are given great opulence. They're given something to rule, but they also have responsibility in the universal affairs, like Indra, for example. He brings the rain, Chandra, the moon, Surya, the sun, so many things like that. So this is just a little breakdown of some history, which is going to lead us to Sukracharya, or Uśanā. Okay. At that time, Vamanadeva appeared as the son of Kasya Muni. Bali Maharaj was very charitably disposed. Sometimes the atheists are also very charitable. Persons who believe that we are doing pious activities, making charities and welfare work to the human society, why should we bother about God? Such persons, even though very moral and pious in the estimation of the material world, are also demons on account of their apathy for Krishna consciousness. So Bali Maharaj was a man of that type. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that you may know people like this, they know that giving in charity makes them look good, right? If you scratch and scratch and scratch, more and more and more underneath the surface, you find that their motivations are actually self-aggrandizement. You find that if you try and push them more, that they will become angry. They will become angry because ultimately their attachment is to their power and their position, not to actually giving, for the sake of giving, not giving as a sacrifice and charity to yajna, to Krishna, but actually there's a material motivation there to hang on to power and their dynasty, and it's a form of control. Because if you can make people believe that you are a good person, right, they will go along with just about everything. So Bali Maharaj, he was a very powerful person, but he understood also the social etiquettes. On a certain level, there's something to be said for that, because this is something that we barely see even today. But this is a situation. So, under the circumstances, he was not averse to accept charity and other pious activities. In other words, Prabhupada's English is very old-fashioned because Srila Prabhupada was being educated in the 19th century. Srila Prabhupada was born, I believe, in 1896. And so he was going to school in the Victorian era in India and being taught by, English schoolmasters. So sometimes the way in which these things are phrased is almost kind of quaint, really. So basically what's this saying is that, he was not averse to giving in charity and doing these, pious activities. He was being guided by his spiritual master, Sukaracharya. Okay, so now we get into it. What does Sukara mean? What does his name actually mean? Because names and meanings are very, very important, and you find this all throughout Sanskrit and the Bhagavad-gītā and these different appellations. Sukara means the semina. It means sperm. It means the fluid that is responsible for or aids in reproduction. In other words, one claims to become acharya on the principles of being born of a Brahmin family. They may be called Sukaracharya or Acharya or preacher, not by dislipic succession, but on the right of heredity. In India, there are still superstitions that one should be initiated by such Sukaracharya family. They are generally called Jati Gosain. Jati Gosain means the caste spiritual master. All over India, especially in Bengal, this Jati Gosain spiritual mastership is very prevalent. But really, Goswami means one who is master of the influence of different senses, namely the influence of the tongue, the influence of the mind, the influence of anger, the influence of the belly, the influence of the genital, and the influence of talking or speech. So one who is the master of these influential webs of sense gratification, he is called Goswami. Goswami is not by hereditary chart. So Sukracharya posed himself as such Goswami spiritual master. He had many mystic powers, therefore he was considered to be very influential spiritual master of the asuras or of the demons. Okay, so basically, this Prabhupada is breaking it down here and saying, you have to be qualified to be a guru. Just because you're born in a certain family does not automatically give you the qualifications to be a Goswami. Go means senses and Swami means master, to be a master of the senses. And to be a master of the senses means to be able to master these different urges that we are always experiencing while we are in the material body, right? To talk, to gossip, our mind pulling us this way and that, to become angry, the belly, I want to eat more and more and more. The influence of the genitals, you have to be able to control your sex desire, your sex impulse. This is very, very important for a teacher, right? We've got so many scandals today because we're finding out, that teachers are sleeping with their students or have been molesting their students and these terrible things. A teacher is meant to be on, a high level like that, where they are just teaching and they are not influenced and they are not predatory. So, and the influence of talking. Okay, so when Vamanadeva appeared, Bali Maharaj was attracted by the beauty of this dwarf Brahmin. I talked about Vamanadeva a couple of weeks ago. Very, very beautiful, charming incarnation. And because Bali Maharaj was charitably disposed, he wanted to give him some charity. But Sukracharya, remember, he had these mystic powers, He was clever, and he could see through people and circumstances. Being elevated in mystic yoga powers, he could understand that Vamanadeva was Vishnu, that he was all-pervading. And in order to favor the demigods, he had come there to cheat Bali Maharaj in the shape of begging some charities. Bali Maharaj was puffed up with his material vanities, And Vāmanadeva, as he is Vishnu, all peaceful, without interrupting his attitude, just approached him in the form of a Brahmin, who has a right to beg something from the princely order. And the principal orders are also always disposed to make charities to the Brahmins. So this is a very interesting psychological profile here. As I said in the beginning of our Mantra Monday, Krishna is Rasaraj. He is expert at relationships. He understands everyone's psychology. He understands where everyone is at. And so here, he could understand, he knew where Bali Maharaj was at. He knew that Bali Maharaj was very proud, of his position and his all the planets that he had conquered, and his prowess and his wealth and his court and all of that. He understood that. But he also understood that Bali Maharaj was charitably disposed because he was following the etiquette of a Kshatriya. And Kshatriyas are to give in charity to Brahmins. Brahmins are mendicants. Brahmins are poor. Usually they will only have maybe one piece of clothing, maybe two, and they beg, meaning they accept alms in exchange for knowledge. They will come and to actually bless you. And as an exchange for that, because they are free of worldly concerns, they're not paying a mortgage on a house, they don't have necessarily a car they're driving or all these different things, they are free, they are renunciates. So in exchange, the Brahmin will, give them some rice, give them a meal, offer them a place to sit, maybe a place to sleep for the night before they're on their way. So, here we go. So Sukracharya, a spiritual master of Bali Maharaj, taught him that everything should be offered to Vishnu. But when Vishnu actually appeared before Bali, he was afraid of Bali Maharaj's charitable disposition. He warned Bali Maharaj that this Vāmanadeva had come there to take everything from him in the shape of charity. Therefore, he should not promise him to give anything. This advice revolted Bali Maharaj because he was formally instructed that everything should be offered to Vishnu. Now wise Sukracharya was asking him not to act by his previous instruction. Sukracharya was afraid of his own position. He was living at the cost of Bali Maharaj. So if Vāmanadeva would take everything away from Bali Maharaj, he was thinking how he would live. That is a materialistic temperament. The materialist does not want to serve or to give to Vishnu because he thinks that by giving away to Vishnu, he will be put into poverty-stricken condition. This is materialistic estimation, but actually that is not the fact, as it will be evidenced by the dealing of Bali Maharaj and Vāmanadeva. Okay, so a little bit more. That is the materialistic way of worshiping. Materialists are always careful for maintaining his material status quo first, and then please Vishnu, although they profess to be devotees of Vishnu. Therefore, the Krishna-conscious persons are greater than such materialistic worshippers. Materialistic person perform all pious activities or devotional activities for some material gain, but as soon as there is any hindrance in the path of material gain, they at once become a demon. They become agitated, right? They're like, no, they lose it. Therefore, bhakti means without any material desires. This is a sign of a pure devotee. He has no motive to satisfy his material desires by devotional service. Okay, and then it goes on. To say, Bali Maharaj is considered to be a great soul because he wanted to serve Vishnu by disobeying his non-bona fide spiritual master. As explained above, Sukracharya was a hereditary spiritual master. By Semenic succession, Bali Maharaj first revolted against a stereotyped Semenic succession spiritual master, and therefore he is Mahajan. Okay, so basically what this is saying is that, You know, we're never meant to follow blindly. We are never meant to follow a teacher blindly. Never. Yes, if we've accepted a teacher, you know, if we've accepted a spiritual teacher, and there has been the due process of examination back and forth, the teacher examines the student examines the teacher, then they can enter in this relationship of student-teacher, disciple-teacher relationship. However, there are some exceptions, and the exception here is shown in this example of Sukracharya, who was materially motivated, because here he was, you know, instructing Bali Maharaj that you should always give in charity to Lord Vishnu. You should always give in charity to Lord Vishnu. And so now there was a break in this teaching. So Bali Maharaj is thinking to himself, what? You know, I've been following you for all these years, and all these years you have told me that I should give in charity to Lord Vishnu. Now here is Lord Vishnu actually coming to see me personally and coming to my court, and now you're telling me that I shouldn't give in charity to him? This seems to be a conflict of interest. I've actually understood the principle. I've understood the teaching, but you, my teacher, have not seemed to have understood the principle. So Bali Maharaj did give in charity, as I covered a few weeks ago, and he actually surrendered completely to Vamanadeva and was very happy. He was actually lived happily ever after, was very happy with that. He didn't lose anything. What he gained was a shift in consciousness. That's the thing, and that's the thing that we need to realize, you know. This is key. This is actually key. So, it's not that God wants us to be poor and miserable and not have enough to eat and be unhappy and, you know, all of this nonsense. No. This whole world was a gift given to us because we wanted to act out some different desires that we had. However, they do come with some rules. They do come with some laws. They do come with natural laws, or divine laws. So if you can live in harmony with those laws and follow those laws, you will be peaceful. Your community will be peaceful. Your neighborhood will be peaceful. And you will also have what you need. You will be prosperous. You will have what you need. But you won't have the anxiety. This is the thing. You won't have the anxiety that goes along with, let me turn off this light because this is burning. You won't have the anxiety that goes along with just having a bunch of things or having a bunch of money or having prosperity, because you will understand where it's coming from, what your relationship is with, from whom it is coming from, and be constantly engaged in a loving reciprocal relationship with that person. And that's the difference. So this is why materialistic persons, and we all are, you know, to some degree. I mean, we're here, right? But this is why this is like an extreme example of why materialistic persons are always in a state of anxiety, no matter how much money they have. No matter how much money they have and how much facility they have at their disposal, there's always some anxiety which goes along with that, which is manifest in their behavior and in their actions of trying to keep it away from other people, right? To try and hoard more and more. It's like pouring gasoline on the fire. You think, how much more can a person have? You know, it's mind-boggling, because whether you're very wealthy or whether you're poor, your stomach can still only hold comfortably 8 ounces of food. You still have to sleep at night, right? You still have to work, and you're still going to die. So that is the explanation here. A little bit of how Sukracharya is also, interestingly, a representative of Krishna. So even though in this pastime, you know, Sukracharya is being rebuked, you know, still if you go back to the whole fight between the demons and the demigods and all that, these things happen periodically in the universe. Sukracharya is clever, you know, he can see and he knows how to plan strategically. So, from a material perspective, Sukracharya was correct, right? But from a spiritual perspective, he was incorrect and he was blind in that way. So now I'm going to go back to the verse here and just do a recap because that was a lot of information. Okay, so text 37. Vṛṣṇīnāṁ vāsudevo asmi, pāṇḍavānāṁ dhanañ-jayaḥ, munīnām api aham vyāsaḥ, kavīnām, Uśanā kaviḥ. Of the descendants of Vṛṣṇi I am Vasudeva, and of the Pāṇḍavas I am Arjuna. Of the sages I am Vyāsa, and of the great thinkers I am Uśanā. So this is what I like about Kṛṣṇa, is that he's not just, you know, it's not just like a one-sided thing, you know. He's not just representing himself always as just like goody two-shoes, right? He's giving us concrete examples, you know, in ways, in different personalities, in different ways in which we can appreciate him. And this is important. So that is text 37 for today's Mantra Monday. Okay, now I got two people on here. I had Paul, I have Jerry, and I have Carl. Carl, do you want to come on camera and have a little chat? Do you have any questions you wanted to ask? Not that I'm trying to put you on the spot, but, you know, if anyone is ever so inclined and they want to come on here and be live with me, it's great, because that way we have a little bit more of a connection, and maybe you have some questions to ask and we can bring another level of humanity and exchange to all of this in this time where so many of us are isolated and can't see each other. So if that interests you, Carl, I don't know, make a comment, or Jerry, if that interests you, make a comment and I can bring you on camera. So that's what's up. Okay, so I'll just keep chatting away here just to bring you up to speed before we close out for this morning, unless someone wants to hop on. And that is, I have made a movie, and the movie is in chapters. It's in 7 chapters. They are bite-sized chapters. On average, they are about 10 minutes long. The longest chapter is 23 minutes long because it's a recap, because there's a lot of stuff that happens. And there's also a bonus chapter. It is free. It is a movie and music experience, and it's an immersive experience. And in it, I explain, or I go through some different topics about life after death, communication with loved ones after they've crossed over, loss of a mother, loss of a grandfather, loss of a child, and how we cope with these things. And it's a big adventure. It's kind of wild. It's kind of weird. These are things that really happened to me. And the reason why I decided to make a movie out of it is because when I got here to where I am, people kept asking me why I came here, because I arrived here from clear the other side of the country and a completely different atmosphere. Coming from New York City and coming all the way to Southern California, very, very different. I mean, the main concerns here are surfing, literally surfing. So after telling the story, I don't know, dozens of times to different people, people would always say, wow, that story is amazing. And then I thought, God, maybe I need to actually codify this and make a movie out of it, because I had documented everything as I went along through these twists and turns. And so, after 3 years of a lot of trial and error, I finally put it together. And if you go to the banner up top there, you know, you'll see the cover. It says light a candle in the darkness, and there's a little box If you're on mobile, it'll appear on the right side that says sign up. So just click on that and it will take you to my website, and which you can watch a brief video explaining what's up. And it's opt-in form, a sign-in form. So basically you just put in your name, you put your email address, and you put your city, where you're from, and you will immediately get bonus content. So I've got some behind-the-scenes stuff there for you, some rare stuff, interviews and some music, because light a candle in the darkness, the whole song inspiration from that is my song, Here's the Light. And then you should get immediately in your inbox the first chapter of the movie. The first chapter is called Parisian Boxes. You're going to get the email from Akayani at akayanimusic.com. So if you don't see it, look in your spam folder and see that, because you want to whitelist my email address that's coming to you so you actually get the chapters. This is the only way that you can experience this movie and album. It's not, while it's for the general public, it's not exactly for the general public, meaning not everyone's going to be interested in this. This is for my big fans. This is a way for us to become closer together, and this is a way for us to talk about things and share things that aren't always talked about and shared about. We talk about death, and when someone dies, we will offer platitudes because we often don't know what to say. But I wanted to take this deeper and with you and let you in on that. And again, it is free. So if you're so inclined, go ahead and avail yourself of that. It will be a very interesting 8 days, I assure you. I assure you that. All right, so thank you so much for being here this morning. I really appreciate your association. Monday's a great day because I get to spend it with you, and I get to spend it vibrating some transcendental sound, and wishing you all the best. Please be safe. Okay, I will see you later. Bye-bye.